Yeah, I think
Why you're my favorite Prime?
these
Time for
conversations
the
are
homophobia. Let's go.
these conversations are a little bit insane to me because I feel like Nacho is just kind of like speaking about like maybe just some of his preferences, and I think like there's a lot of
Mhm.
parents out there that like kind of want like I guess that they're more comfortable with like kind of like you explain things to children that are like age appropriate, and I think as age increases that you would be able to say like, okay, maybe we'll start here and just kind of explain the idea of basic sexuality in any kind of capacity, and then you start expounding on that as children get older and mature, right? Like you start at a very very young age telling children about what their anatomy is, just like the difference between a penis and a vagina, but you don't start talking to them about intercourse or all of those things until they're about to start approaching puberty, because I think the idea of like trying to force like the idea of sexual intercourse down like the mind of a second grader or third grader is, I think that could be pretty harmful. So I do think we need to look for age appropriate things, and I think the idea that like inappropriate things are happening at the Pride Parade sometimes is just absolutely founded. I remember in the 2019, there was like during Pride parades during that year, there was this video that had been circulating about this little boy, and I think he was around 10 or 11 years old, and he was like wearing these short shorts, and he was like gyrating in front of these dudes and stuff, and like twerking and all this stuff, and there was some guy that tried to approach the boy, and then like so some adults, he had like like a low key security team around him that were like kind of holding off these adults that were doing that. And then there was another video where these little boys, I think one of them was 8 years old, and he was in drag, and he was like dancing around these men, and they started handing him dollars. And so I think the idea that some inappropriate things are happening there, I think is absolutely well founded. And I think
You're talking.
I feel like you're
You're
isolating.
talking about Desmond is Amazing dancing at a gay nightclub. That's not a thing that happened at
Oh,
Pride.
really?
Okay, so I'm talking about one. There was during a Pride parade is one of the events, and then the other thing was during a nightclub on the same
Yeah.
night. And so yeah, I think both of those things were wildly inappropriate, and I think the idea like this has kind of put parents, I think, in a lot of ways on guard. I think someone else said something that was pretty cringe, like the idea that like, man, we should just all right. It sounded like it's what they were getting at. I don't want to mischaracterize them, but it sounded like they were getting at the idea of like we should just kind of leave sexuality up to the schools, and I think that's also horrible. But yeah, so I think what Nacho is saying just about the idea like that some of these things. Oh, and one last thing, like people keep anytime like Nacho wants to bring up a point about sexuality, and like how some things are kind of like are sexual in nature. People bringing up like swimsuits, right? Like swimsuits are not sexual. Like when people are wearing swimsuits at a beach, it's not a sexual thing. Like in fact, it's very very normalized, such that it's like, hey, these are the kind of gear that you would wear because it's less restricting when you get in the water and so on and so forth. So it's not necessarily sexualized. Now it can be sexualized. People can do things to highlight them such that they're sexualized, but they're not sexualized. Typically, it's like something that's completely normative. So the idea that we're like associating that with, I don't know, like a harness or like a dildo suit or any of those things, it's just absurd. Like it's
But Nacho said he wouldn't want his kids around that.
So wait,
that example that you
probably
just gave.
not. Yeah,
yeah.
Wait,
Like,
Nacho, you don't like. Wait, so Nacho,
long bikini.
let me make
a
sure.
real skimpy fucking bathing suit. Like, yeah, probably not. Yeah, but like, also to Fanatiq's point, like, yeah, it would be a lot easier to explain these things. Like, yeah, this is just a bathing suit. Like, these are like this is people wear these to the beach. Like, whatever, this is more comfortable. Like, or they want to get a tan, whatever the fuck it is. Like, it's a lot easier to explain that than it is to explain like a bunch of fucking harnesses and fucking ball gags and whatever the fuck else, and a fucking dog mask and a leash around their neck, and them crawling around on all fours, like Speedo.
Okay, so don't take your kids to that. Then that's fine.
Okay, but then
there are junior Pride events. This is Kingsters generally congregate in one area at at a Pride anyway, right? Like your kid doesn't have to be around that. You feel that you are ill-equipped to explain what's going on there. That's fine.
And also, I think you're overcomplicating even explaining it to them as well. Like you're acting like you have to explain freaking E equals MC squared to your child just because they saw a dude in a freaking dog costume.
And literally, that's why I questioned earlier. That's why no, because when you got on this earlier, this is why I asked the question, like, have you had kids, or like who on this panel has had kids, or like been involved with raising kids? Because it doesn't seem like you have that background. If you're pretending like this is not going to be.
Here's what you say. All right, here's what you say. I'm gonna give you
a young child.
I disagree with you.
Some people are into some weird stuff, honey. That's it.
Okay,
You don't have to
that's not.
explain.
No,
There's
that's
no-
no. Wait, no.
Fucking
Please don't
bullshit.
be
Like,
no.
imagine-
Omni-slap.
Imagine,
Omni-slap. Please
Imagine
don't be
thinking
that.
children
Please don't be that that reductive. The idea that like children, like when you ask, if someone
Oh,
sees
wait.
something like the idea that if a child asks you a question and you give them such a ridiculous reductive non-answer that's just going to be the end of it is absolutely absurd. And
It's
in
not a
doing so,
reductive
and in doing so,
Listen,
and if you do something like that, then what's going to end up happening is that the
Can't
child
even be honest.
afterward, if you do something like that, what's going to end up happening is that the child will then, that curiosity is going to cause him to start looking, one, to lose faith in his parent to actually answer questions, which will cause them not to ask questions in the future. And furthermore, they're more likely to start seeking that sort of information from other sources. So I think
Give them an age of
Yeah, because Johnny down the street with 6 older brothers is going to tell him like exactly what it means. Like, what?
Yeah.
So give him an age-appropriate answer.
What's an
Yeah.
age-appropriate answer to the
Like,
idea of someone
like,
walking
if you
around
think-
with
if
like...
you think-
Yeah, but you
We
just
are
being
sorry.
like-
Oh my God! All right. So look, I was just trying to speed this along. All right. So they did give an age appropriate answer previously, right? Like tell them. Some people are into pretending to be a dog, right? There it is.
You don't
That's
have to.
perfectly.
That's it.
Exactly what that was.
If you think a kid can't understand the concept of some people like dressing up for fun, then you haven't spent any time around
No,
kids.
that's not the problem. No.
Uh-huh.
So that's reductive too, and here's why. Because they're literally at a pride parade, right? And typically, if you're going to be taking your child to a pride parade, you're probably going to be explaining to them a foundational concept about what the purpose of a pride parade is. So now, when you try to explain that, so at this pride parade, when you're talking about people who were born in specific ways or people who express themselves in specific ways, and you're like breaking these things down to them, now when they see these people in these dog suits, they're going to be trying to line these things up. How does this line up? How does this line up with the other thing, right? And now when you go and you try to reduce that statement to something incredibly, when you try to reduce that statement to something incredibly reductive, when you try to, let me finish the sentence. Let me finish the statement. Let me finish this one statement, please. So when you try to reduce that statement to something as ridiculous as the idea of like, oh no, they just like to dress up. Then it's like, wait, what does this have to do with the pride thing? And then there's going to be a complete disconnect, and it's obviously dishonest, and they're not going to trust
What
you.
you foundationally think LGBTQIA Pride Parade, etc., is like. What foundationally can you define exactly what you think that is, and then we can address that.
Sure, I would say that a big portion of the Pride Parade is somewhat seeking to normalize some of to normalize the existence of LGBTQIA people, and to be able to demonstrate to people that they're human, and to generate support for those people, and to recognize that they are marginalized, and to take some of their issues and bring them to the forefront, and help people. For some people, it's a way of them connecting with other people that are like them, such that they can be able to say, when they come from like communities in which they're not necessarily able to be, where they feel a lot more constricted and things like that, it gives them an outlet in which they're connected with other people that are like them, which increases their confidence and shows them that they can be proud and loud about what they.
I thought about the topic.